Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered some pretty wild topics on this show, but today we're going to dive into something that's captured hearts worldwide, the world of Pokemon.
Oh, this is going to be fun. It's fascinating, really, how much more there is to Pokemon than just those cute faces and catchy theme songs.
Right. Like, sure, everyone knows Pikachu, but have you ever stopped to think about the cultural forces that shaped this whole monster collecting craze, the global impact?
I mean, you've got centuries-old folklore, mythology, even video game history got mashed up to create Pokemon.
It's a cultural tapestry woven right into the fabric of the game and unraveling it. Well, that's what we're here to do on this deep dive. So let's start with the basics. Pokemon, at its core, is all about collecting, training, and battling these creatures, right?
Yeah, these pocket monsters, as they're called. And let's not forget that iconic tagline, gotta catch 'em all. That's not just some marketing ploy,
Oh, tell me more.
It's actually rooted in a Japanese phrase, getosuru. It literally translates to getting, so that drive to collect, it's practically baked into the game's DNA.
Okay, so we got to catch them, but how? Enter those iconic Pokeballs.
Ah, yes, those little spheres of technological wonder. Think of them as high-tech versions of those gachapon balls in Japan. You know, the vending machines with the little capsule toys?
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. So like a surprise every time you catch one.
Exactly. It's that element of surprise combined with the challenge of actually catching them that makes it so engaging. But moving on to the Pokemon themselves, I mean, yeah, they're cute, but their designs. Let me tell you, there are some seriously surprising inspirations behind them.
Okay, spill the tea. What's behind those designs?
Well, of course, you see elements of nature animals, plants, all that, but the designers went way beyond that. They pulled inspiration from science and technology, religious and mythological figures, and get this, even classic movie monsters. Think Godzilla, Mothra, that whole genre.
Hold on, wait. Movie monsters. Those don't exactly scream cute and cuddly to me.
That's the genius of it. Pokemon took these sometimes fearsome beings and reimagined them. Made them, well, approachable, lovable even.
I'm starting to see it now. Like taking something scary and making it friendly.
You got it. You've got Pokemon that resemble golems, for example. Then there's the Yuki Onna, that's a snow woman from Japanese folklore. Banshees, hellhounds, even monstrous plants, and those fiery, cat-like demons called Kasha.
Wow, I had no idea. It's like each Pokemon is a little window into a different culture or myth. But you know what really sets Pokemon apart for me? That bond between trainer and monster?
Absolutely. It's not just about throwing them into battle. It's about trust, loyalty, their companions, partners. It humanizes those monsters in a way that makes us, well, actually care about them.
Totally. They're not just tools or weapons. They're like part of the team.
Exactly. But let's talk about the success story of Pokemon itself, because it's almost as crazy as the creatures themselves.
Yeah, this little game became a global phenomenon.
You wouldn't believe it, but even Nintendo, the company behind it all, they were skeptical at first. Didn't put much effort into promoting the first game. So the question is, what made it explode into this worldwide sensation?
Yeah, what was it about Pokemon that captured everyone's imagination?
Well, to understand that, we got to go back to Japan in the 1990s. Think about it. Huge emphasis on education, crazy packed schedules, long commutes, portable gaming. Perfect fit.
Yeah, makes sense. People needed fun on the go.
Right. And Pokemon offered that, but it also offered a sense of community in this increasingly tech-driven world. And this need for connection, it goes way back to the game's creator, Satoshi Tajiri. Ram a bell.
Satoshi Tajiri. Wait a minute, isn't that the name of Ash Ketchum in the anime?
Got it. Tajiri actually named his protagonist after himself. Now, here's the thing. As a kid, Tajiri was obsessed with collecting bugs.
Oh, I see where this is going. Like catching bugs, catching Pokemon.
Right. That childhood passion is literally mirrored in Pokemon's core gameplay. Collect them all, catalog them, you know the drill. But here's another layer to the story. Tajiri was mentored by none other than Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who created Mario.
Oh, wow. Talk about a dream team. Can you imagine those brainstorming sessions?
Seriously. It makes you wonder how much of that mentorship shaped Pokemon. I mean, you can almost see Miyamoto's influence, right? The emphasis on exploration, the bright, colorful world, even that quirky sense of humor.
Okay, so we've got a passionate creator, a perfect time for it to take off, and a dash of video game history in the mix. But you mentioned something earlier that really intrigued me, Yokai. What's their connection to Pokemon?
All right, so yokai, they're basically supernatural creatures from Japanese folklore. They can be a bit odd, a bit mischievous even. They're like spirits, demons, or monsters, all part of this ancient belief system in Japan.
So are you saying that Pokemon are modern-day yokai?
In a way, yeah. And the idea of collecting and battling these creatures isn't exactly new either. During Japan's Edo period, yokai-themed card games were all the rage. Imagine kids back then collecting these beautifully illustrated cards, just like with Pokemon cards today.
That's wild. So the whole monster card thing goes back centuries.
It's amazing how traditions evolve, right? But fast forward to the late 19th century, there was this scholar, Enryo Inu, who actually tried to debunk yokai stories. He thought they were holding Japan back.
Debunk yokai, like prove they didn't exist.
Exactly. The irony is, by trying to categorize and explain them away, he actually ended up preserving those stories.
Talk about unintended consequences. So the yokai lived on even with someone trying to, well, erase them.
And they found a new home in another emerging art form of the time manga.
Oh, manga. I love manga. What's the connection there?
Well, think about it, manga, with its distinctive art style and this blend of Japanese and European influences, it was the perfect way to spread those yokai stories. And the term manga itself, that was coined by the artist Hokusai, one of the pioneers of the art forms.
So manga kept yokai alive in the public imagination, paving the way for Pokemon, huh?
Exactly. And a key figure in that yokai revival was Shigeru Mizuki. He created a manga series called Hakaba Kitaro. It's all about this young boy who interacts with all sorts of yokai. The theme, harmony between humans and these creatures.
Sounds familiar. That's like Pokemon too, right? Trainers and their Pokemon working together, becoming friends.
You're catching on. That idea of coexistence, understanding between humans and monsters, it's deeply rooted in Japanese culture. You see it in both Hakaba Kitaro and Pokemon.
Okay, so we've got yokai manga, but you also mentioned another influence, kaiju. Godzilla and the gang.
Oh yeah, gotta love those kaiju. Those giant monsters wreaking havoc on cities. That whole genre exploded with the original Godzilla movie in 1954.
I can definitely see the connection to Pokemon. It's all about epic battles.
Totally, but here's where it gets interesting. The kaiju craze went beyond just the movies. This guy, Saburo Ishizumi, he had a brilliant ear, collectible kaiju figures. But the twist, he made them cute.
Mini, adorable versions of those terrifying monsters. Genius.
It was a stroke of brilliance. Suddenly, kids could hold their favorite monster, recreate those epic battles, even make up their own stories. It was a whole new way to engage with those characters.
It's like what kids do now with Pokemon cards and figures. They're not just watching, they're part of the action.
Exactly, and there's another cool parallel illustrated kaiju guidebooks. Those books would give you detailed info about each monster, sort of like the Pokédex in Pokemon.
So we've got this whole lineage of monster storytelling in Japan, leading up to Pokemon. But how did technology play into all of this?
Well, that's where the Game Boy comes in. This was the late 80s, and Nintendo had just released this revolutionary handheld console. Gaming on the go was born. It opened up a world of possibilities.
It's like all the pieces were falling into place at just the right time.
The perfect storm. And we should also talk about this idea from Matt Alt. He's this expert on Japanese pop culture. He says that Pokemon's success was built on decades of Japan successfully marketing toys and electronics to the American market. Started back in the 50s and really took off with games like Pac-Man in the 80s.
So by the time Pokemon arrived, the groundwork was already laid.
Exactly. Japan was ready to conquer the world with cute, collectible monsters. Funny enough, even with all that, Nintendo still wasn't so sure about it.
What? Didn't they see the potential?
Ironically, when they launched Pokemon in 1996, they'd almost given up on the Game Boy. Didn't have high hopes. But they had a secret weapon, the game's unique design.
So what made it so special?
They released it in two versions, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green. Here's the catch 11 of the 151 Pokemon could only be obtained if you traded with someone who had the other version.
You couldn't catch them all on your own. That's clever.
It was genius marketing, but it was also deeply rooted in Tajiri's vision. Remember, he was all about encouraging real-world interaction, get those kids connecting, collaborating.
So it wasn't just a gimmick, it was about bringing people together.
Absolutely, and boy did it work. Kids were trading like crazy, comparing collections, battling it out. It was a huge social phenomenon.
And it tapped into this concept of kawaii, right? That whole Japanese thing about cuteness.
Bingo. Kawaii is a huge deal in Japanese culture. Sure, it's cute, but it's more than that. It's a whole aesthetic, a worldview. It's about softness, roundness, those childlike features.
So it's like cuteness with substance.
You got it. And one of the anime's creators, Masakazu Kubo, even said they were trying to target young girls and mothers with the show, but they had this challenge. How do you convey that kawaii using the Game Boy's limited graphics? Those early games weren't exactly known for being visually stunning.
Yeah, how did they pull that off with those blocky graphics?
That's where Pikachu steps in. Of all the Pokemon, he hit that perfect balance. Bright colors, but not aggressive. Catchy name. A sweet, expressive face, and of course, that cuddly shape.
Pikachu, the ambassador of Kawaii, makes sense why he became so iconic.
Absolutely. He's like a modern-day Mickey Mouse or Hello Kitty. But he's more than just a mascot. He represents everything that makes Pokemon special. The joy of discovery, those powerful friendships, and of course the sheer appeal of these fantastic creatures.
So Pikachu helped launch Pokemon into the stratosphere. But how did it go from, a Japanese sensation to a global phenomenon?
Well, after that wild success in Japan, Nintendo knew they had to strike while the iron was hot. They went all in on expanding the franchise. Manga series in a popular boys magazine, anime series launched in '97, and then, boom, the first Pokemon movie. Talk about solidifying a spot in pop culture history.
It was Pokemon everywhere you looked.
And what's amazing is that it wasn't just for kids. It grabbed everyone, boys, girls, adults. Everyone wanted to be a part of this monster collecting craze.
I remember collecting those cards. It wasn't even about the game at that point. It was about the creatures themselves. They were just so cool, so imaginative.
And when it hit the US in '98, it took the country by storm. By '99, it had already raked in a mind-blowing $5 billion. We'd never seen anything like it.
A cultural phenomenon fueled by monsters. But there's got to be something more to it, right? What is it about Pokemon that connects with people on such a deep level?
That's a great question. I think beyond all the battles and the collecting, it's that sense of wonder, of exploration. It speaks to something deep within us.
That desire to venture out into the unknown, discover new creatures.
Exactly. And remember how we talked about how the main character is named after the creator, Satoshi Tajiri? It's like he's inviting us all to join him on this grand adventure.
I love that. And it's not just mindless wandering either. There's a real emphasis on nature, on respecting the environment.
Totally. Think about the Pokemon professors, those wise mentors in the game. They're constantly emphasizing how everything's interconnected. Appreciate diversity, treat those creatures with care.
It's like this love letter to nature, disguised as a game about battling monsters.
Exactly. It's about valuing biodiversity, seeing Pokemon as living beings, not just commodities.
Of course, nothing this big escapes criticism. What are some of the controversies around Pokemon?
Oh, there have been a few. Some parents and educators were worried that the battles might encourage aggression.
Yeah, I could see that point.
But the counter-argument is that those battles are stylized. No gore, no blood. It's more about strategy, teamwork, that bond between trainer and Pokemon.
It's about using strength and skill for good, not just mindlessly fighting.
Right, and you have to consider the context. In the Pokemon world, battles are a way to compete, to test your skills. It's not meant to be a reflection of real-world violence.
More like how we enjoy playing sports or competitive games.
Exactly. Another criticism focuses on the whole catching and trading aspect. Some say it encourages disrespect for nature, like those creatures are just objects to be exploited.
I've heard that argument before.
It's a tricky one. On one hand, Pokemon really emphasizes caring for those creatures, feeding them, keeping them healthy.
Yeah, it's not just about catching and battling. You have to nurture them, build a relationship.
Precisely. And there's a message of conservation in there too, even if it's not always explicit.
Like appreciating all the different kinds of Pokemon, protecting those species.
Right. But then you have the element of capturing them in the first place, using them in battles. Some people see that as a form of exploitation.
It's a complicated issue.
And some critics take it even further, comparing it to colonialism and slavery. They say capturing and making Pokemon fight mirrors how those in power have historically exploited others.
That's a heavy comparison.
It's definitely sparked debate in the Pokemon community. Some are offended, others see it as a valid critique of the power dynamics in the game.
Wow. It's pretty incredible how a game about cute monsters can bring up such complex issues. Makes you think about history, ethics, our relationship with nature.
It's a testament to Pokemon's impact that it can spark such passionate debate. It's more than just entertainment. It forces us to examine our values and beliefs.
It's like it's holding up a mirror to society. And speaking of impact, let's talk about Pokemon Go. That was huge.
Oh yeah, Pokemon Go was a game changer. Shattered records, became the most downloaded smartphone game in history. Within 2 weeks of its US release, it had 21 million users. And get this, a lot of them were adults.
Not just kids reliving their childhood.
Nope. Adults embraced this whole new way to experience Pokemon. And you know what's cool? It brought Tajiri's original vision to life. Remember, he wanted to encourage social connection through the game.
And Pokemon Go took that idea out into the real world.
Exactly. People were meeting in parks, exploring their cities, making friends, all thanks to those virtual creatures.
It had such a positive impact. People were getting active, socializing.
Totally, it tapped into something fundamental. And it reminds us that sometimes the simplest ideas, like catching those cute monsters, can have the biggest impact.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? We've uncovered all these cultural roots, the global impact, even talked about some tough questions.
Well, I think the big takeaway is that Pokemon is more than just a game. It's a window into cultural fusion, the power of nostalgia. It shows how those cute monsters can capture the world's imagination.
And they become a bridge between cultures, connecting people through a shared love of adventure, friendship, and those adorable creatures.
Absolutely. It's a testament to imagination, to creativity, a reminder that even monsters can bring people together.
This deep dive has been incredible. It's totally changed how I see Pokemon. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Pokemon's always evolving. It'll be fascinating to see what they come up with next, but it's also a reminder that even the things we love, the things that seem simple, can have a deep cultural impact.
Couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that even in a world full of information, sometimes the most unexpected things can teach us the most. What stood out to you about Pokemon's journey? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep catching those pocket monsters.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating mix, isn't it? Japanese folklore, video game history, marketing genius. It all comes together to create this global phenomenon.
It's like the perfect recipe for cultural influence. But we've talked a lot about the positives so far, the environmental themes, those social connections. What about the other side? Are there valid concerns about the messages Pokemon might be sending, especially to kids?
There are definitely some points raised by critics that are worth considering, like the idea that the battles promote violence. That's been around since the very beginning.
Yeah, I can see why some parents might be a little worried about that. I mean, training your Pokemon to fight other Pokemon is a core part of the game, right?
Right, but the thing is, those battles are pretty stylized, almost cartoonish. There's no blood or gore, nothing like that. It's much more about strategy and teamwork than outright aggression, and the focus is always on that bond between the trainer and their Pokemon, working together to overcome obstacles.
So it's not just about mindlessly fighting, it's about using your strength and skill for a greater purpose.
Exactly. It's about that partnership. And you also can't forget the context. In the world of Pokemon, battles are just a form of competition. It's how trainers test their skills and the strength of their bond with their Pokemon. It's not supposed to mirror real-world violence.
Makes sense. It's like how we enjoy watching sports or playing competitive games. It's all about the challenge, the strategy, the satisfaction of winning fairly.
Exactly. But there's another criticism that brings up some really interesting points. The idea that catching and training Pokemon might promote a disregard for nature.
Oh yeah, I've heard that argument, that it sends the message that it's okay to exploit animals for our own entertainment.
Yeah, it's a valid concern, and it's one we should look at closely. On the one hand, the game does put a lot of emphasis on caring for your Pokemon, treating them with respect.
Right, you have to feed them, train them, make sure they're healthy. It's not just about catching them and then throwing them into battle.
Exactly. You got to take care of your team. And the games highlight the diversity of the Pokemon world, too, and the importance of protecting all those different species.
So there is a message of conservation woven in there, even if it's not always front and center.
Definitely, there is. But then, on the other hand, you also have this element of capturing those creatures in the first place and using them in battles, which, yeah, some people see as a form of exploitation.
It's a complicated issue, lots of different perspectives to consider.
It is, and some critics take it a step further. They compare the Pokemon world to colonialism and slavery.
Oh wow, that's a pretty serious accusation. How do they even make that connection?
Well, they point to the act of capturing wild Pokemon and making them fight for human trainers. They say it mirrors how colonizers exploited native populations, and how people were enslaved for someone else's gain.
I see the parallel, but it does feel like kind of a stretch.
It's definitely a provocative argument, and it's definitely caused a lot of debate within the Pokemon community. Some people find it really offensive, while others see it as a legitimate critique of the power dynamics in the game.
It's pretty amazing, though, how a game about these cute monsters can bring up such complex and challenging questions, you know, about history, about ethics, about how we treat the natural world.
That's what makes Pokemon so interesting. It's not just mindless fun, it reflects our values, even if it does so in ways we might not expect.
It's like holding a mirror up to society. But even with the criticism, Pokemon's popularity keeps growing. What do you think explains that? What makes it so appealing, even after all these years?
Well, for one, the game design is really clever. It's simple enough for kids to pick up, but there's also a lot of depth there, enough to keep adults interested. And that gotta catch 'em all mentality, that's seriously addictive. Plus, they're constantly introducing new Pokemon, new game mechanics. It always feels fresh.
Yeah, what is it about that gotta catch 'em all idea that's so powerful? Is it the thrill of the hunt? Or is it more about completing that collection?
I think it's a bit of both. There's something about collecting things that just feels good, especially when those things are rare. And in Pokemon, Each new creature you catch, it's a discovery. It's a potential new partner for your team. It's a constant cycle of exploration and reward.
Right. And then there's the nostalgia factor. So many adults today grew up with Pokemon, and now they're sharing that love with their own kids.
Absolutely. It's multi-generational at this point. Those early experiences with Pokemon created this powerful sense of nostalgia for millions of people, and now they're passing on that legacy. It's a shared experience, something that connects different generations.
It's like a cultural touchstone, something we all share.
Yeah, exactly. And we can't forget the influence of Japanese pop culture in general. Anime, manga, video games, they've all become huge global phenomena, and Pokemon is right there at the forefront of that success.
It's like Pokemon became this ambassador for Japanese culture, introducing the world to these unique, imaginative creatures.
Definitely. And don't forget the power of kawaii, that Japanese aesthetic of cuteness. It's everywhere in Pokemon, and it's something that appeals to people of all ages and cultures.
It's like those adorable little creatures tap into this instinct to nurture and protect. No wonder they've captivated the world.
Right, and then of course there's Pokemon Go. It took the Pokemon world and brought it into our reality, got people outside, exploring their communities, connecting with each other in new ways.
Pokemon Go was a game changer. Suddenly, the whole world was our playground.
It was a genius move. It breathed new life into the whole Pokemon craze, introduced it to a whole new generation.
So where do you see all of this going? What do you think the future holds for Pokemon?
That's a tough question. It's hard to predict where it'll go next, but Pokemon has shown this incredible ability to adapt and evolve. It embraces new technologies, new platforms. It's always finding new ways to engage with its fans.
It's like those pocket monsters have this knack for staying ahead of the curve.
They do, and I have no doubt that Pokemon will continue to surprise and delight us for years to come. It's proof that imagination, creativity, and a little bit of cuteness can be incredibly powerful forces.
This deep dive has been amazing. It's been fascinating uncovering the cultural roots of Pokemon, exploring the impact it's had, even tackling some of the ethical questions it brings up.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We've gone from yokai to kaiju to kawaii and seen how all those elements shaped the Pokemon universe.
We've talked about the game design, the marketing, that incredible ability to connect with people on such a deep level.
And we even tackled some of those criticisms and controversies, acknowledging that even something as beloved as Pokemon is complex and multifaceted.
But in the end, I think we can all agree that Pokemon has had a huge impact on the world.
For sure. It's brought joy, laughter, a sense of wonder to so many people.
It's encouraged people to get out there, explore, and connect with one another.
And it's taught us that even monsters can have something to teach us about friendship, loyalty, and the importance of understanding those who are different from us.
So what are your final thoughts on this amazing journey?
Well, Pokemon's a testament to the power of storytelling, the magic of gameplay, and the unique connection we feel to these fantastic creatures.
It's like those pocket monsters have become a part of our shared DNA.
And who knows what amazing adventures are waiting for us as the world of Pokemon keeps expanding.
That's what's so exciting about it. It's a constant reminder that there's always more to discover. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and of course, keep catching those pocket monsters. It's pretty amazing, huh? To think this global phenomenon, this whole Pokemon universe, started with just one person's passion.
Yeah, it really shows what can happen when you combine passion with creativity. It can snowball into something much bigger than yourself.
And at the heart of it all, those monsters. They're fascinating, sometimes a little creepy, but ultimately they're endearing. They've really captured our imaginations for decades.
It's interesting, isn't it, how monsters have always had this hold on us. They represent the unknown, the things that both scare us and draw us in.
Yeah, they challenge our perceptions, make us question our boundaries, make us confront the things that make us uncomfortable.
But in the world of Pokemon, those monsters take on a different role. They're not just creatures to be feared or defeated. They become companions, partners, even friends.
Right, a completely different way of thinking about monsters. Instead of focusing on that fear, Pokemon emphasizes empathy, understanding, connection.
Yeah, and that's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels so divided. It reminds us that even those who seem different, who seem strange or scary, can be our allies.
Exactly. Pokemon shows us that even the most unusual-looking creatures can find common ground and work together. It's a message of tolerance, acceptance, embracing diversity.
And that message has resonated with people worldwide. It doesn't matter your background, your culture, your age.
Pokemon has become a universal language, a way to connect through a shared love of these amazing creatures.
And as we've seen throughout this deep dive, it's a story that's deeply connected to Japanese culture and history.
Right, from those ancient yokai legends to modern manga and anime Japan has such a rich tradition of monster storytelling.
And Pokémon takes that tradition and shares it with the whole world. It's introduced millions of people to the wonders of Japanese folklore, mythology, and pop culture.
This whole journey, exploring the origins of Pokemon, its global impact, those reasons behind its lasting appeal, it's been incredible.
Yeah, it has. We've delved into the worlds of yokai, kaiju, and kawaii. We've seen how those elements shaped the Pokemon universe.
We've talked about the game's design, the marketing, that incredible ability to connect with people on such a deep level.
We even grappled with some of those criticisms and controversies, right? Recognizing that even the most beloved things have different sides to them.
But ultimately, I think we can all agree, Pokemon has made its mark.
Absolutely. It's brought joy, laughter, a sense of wonder to millions.
Encouraged people to get out there, be active, explore, and connect with each other.
And it's taught us that even monsters can offer valuable lessons. Lessons about friendship, loyalty, and the importance of understanding and accepting those who are different.
Wrapping up this deep dive into Pokemon, I'm honestly filled with a sense of awe and gratitude.
Awe for the creativity and imagination of those who brought this whole thing to life.
And gratitude for the countless hours of entertainment, for the friendships it sparked, for the memories it's created, all thanks to those incredible pocket monsters.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Pokemon is a testament to the power of imagination, the magic of storytelling, that enduring fascination we have with monsters.
It's a journey that's still unfolding. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Me neither, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop catching those Pokemon.
Until next time on The Deep Dive, this is your host, signing off.